Hey, Chad Peterman here. Welcome to AI Trade Talk, a new series on Can't Stop the Growth. We're redefining the future of home services with AI, one conversation at a time. In each episode, we'll dig into real-world strategies, innovations, and opportunities that AI is creating for home service companies like yours. Let's jump in and explore how to work smarter, serve better, and grow faster.
Welcome to AI Trade Talk with ZyraTalk. My name is Brad Scruggs, founder and president at ZyraTalk, and this is a show where we interview industry leaders in the home service space to learn ways that they're growing and what they're doing to handle certain challenges. As an AI company, we're also focused on what's coming in the future, so we're going to focus that in the conversation as well. So whatever you're doing, whether it's driving, working, maybe you're doing dishes, or just having us on as background noise, sit back and enjoy the show. All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I am here with Paul Maskill, and he does a lot of fractional CFO work for the trades, primarily plumbing, HVAC, electrical companies. So really excited to be chatting with Paul today. We're going to go through what it takes to be financially steady as a home service business. There's a lot of hype around selling and exiting to a PE group. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But whether or not you're looking to sell your business, it's very important to understand what it takes to be in a good spot financially, understanding your metrics. Paul and I were just having a quick conversation, and you ask business owners, most of them don't know pretty basic metrics month over month. They think their CPA should be doing it for them when that's not their job. They just should be filing taxes for you. So I'll let Paul give an introduction on himself, and then we'll get into the conversation.
Awesome. Thanks, Brad. Super excited to be here. So I am Paul Maskill. I live in Raleigh, North Carolina. I've been down here since 2010, and that's when my entrepreneur journey really started. Before 2010, I actually used to work in finance. So I grew up around the trades. My dad was a one-man band. He owned his own hardwood floor company. Really, I was kind of immersed in that business, just watching him grow it and all the people, around him, the plumbers, the electricians, the mechanics, all the people that are in home service. My idea of, being a business owner back then was everything that I saw, and it was just a one-man band. So growing up, my dad, my family said, don't go that route, go to school, get good grades, go to college, and then go work for big corporations. So that's what I did. I got a finance degree from the University of Michigan, moved to Chicago in 2007, worked for a big bank, and then I watched 2008 happen. And when I watched that happen, I realized this isn't really safe at all. I basically own my own business. I have one customer. If that customer fires me, I'm out of business. I watched all these people that back then I thought were really old, like 40, 50 years old, who had poured, 10, 15, 25 years into this organization because they wanted the benefits. They wanted the 401k, the health insurance, the paid vacation. But one, they were miserable. Two, then they got laid off and they had no other opportunity to make money. So to me, that was a blessing in disguise. I realized I don't want to work for somebody else. I don't want to work for a corporation. I want to be in charge, of my destiny and of my success. So I quit in 2010, moved to Raleigh, North Carolina. Like I said, I've been here since then. And in the last 14, 15 years, I've scaled and sold 4 different service-based businesses. Most recently was an electrical company that I had bought into, scaled it by over 500% in 3 years, and then exited that in 2024. And now I do exactly what you said. I do fractional CFO work for companies in the trades. That's the only focus that we have, small to medium-sized blue-collar businesses. And a lot of people say, Paul, what does a CFO do? And I already have a bookkeeper and a CPA, and you kind of alluded to that. But to keep it super simple, our number one job is to make sure our clients have consistent positive cash flow. So that way they have clarity, they have confidence, they can sleep well at night. So we're looking forward. We're doing strategy, we're doing forecasting, projecting, making sure our metrics are right. Whereas a bookkeeper and CPA, they're doing everything that happened in the past. The bookkeeper's putting everything in buckets. The CPA is telling you how much you owe in taxes. So using a simple car analogy, if you're looking in the rear view mirror, you see your bookkeeper and CPA. If we're looking forward, looking at the GPS, that's what a fractional CFO does. We use numbers to make every decision in a business because the numbers don't lie. It removes emotion and ego. As much as it pains many business owners, the numbers are going to tell you the truth. And then it's a matter of, if that business owner wants to listen to the numbers to then make the next decision. So that's what we do every day.
And Paul, who would your ideal customer be? I know you mentioned you work with small to medium-sized home service businesses. Is it someone doing 500 grand a year? Is it someone doing 5 million plus a year? Like, what's the range of customer you typically work with?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So Usually they start at a little bit over $1 million. And the main reason for that is we're not discriminating against people who are under $1 million, but really if you're under $1 million, usually the owner is still out in the truck at least half of the time. And when they're out in the truck, out in the field, it's really hard for them to implement what we need to get implemented in order to get to where we want to go. So at that point, I tell all our clients, the job of a CFO is to make sure we're getting a return on every dollar leaving the company. And if you're paying for a fractional CFO and you can't put in the work that you need in order to get the results you want, you're wasting your money. So at least $1 million in revenue. The owner isn't in the fields, all day, every day, turning the wrench per se. And then up to like the $15 million range. After that, you should have somebody in-house that's looking at the stuff on a daily basis because there's just a lot more moving parts, especially if you're on the service side. If you're a $15 million service business, not doing a lot of construction, in my opinion, you probably need somebody full-time that's like doing either controller level work where they're overseeing everything, or they're doing, more or less the CFO role and, helping whoever's doing all the books and like that. So I would say our average client is in like the $4 to $5 million range. They're scaling. They're getting a little bit stuck. They're a little bit bogged down. They don't have as much money in the bank as they thought they should if they're a $4 to $5 million company. And they finally realize that you need to solve a few problems that revenue won't solve. A lot of times we think, man, there's not enough money in the bank. We just need to go get more revenue. Well, if we haven't solved the underlying problems, more revenue is just going to make those underlying problems bigger.
Yeah, I love how you say the numbers do not lie. It sets the ego aside. You're looking at the numbers, and then numbers tell a story, and you can really see what's actually happening within the business. So, okay, you walk into a business, let's say week one, business doing 4 to 5 million. What do you typically see? Do these owners know? I mean, if someone's looking to sell to a PE group and you're talking about things like EBITDA, net, gross profit margins, is this a foreign language to them, or like what do they know? What don't they know?
Yeah, so they've heard all those terms. They've heard EBITDA, they've heard gross profit, they've heard net profit, they've heard closing rate, they've probably heard call booking rate. They've heard a lot of these things, but they don't know what they are, what they should be, and then how do we actually get them to change. So the biggest issue I see with a $4 to $5 million company is we're just going to start at the top. If you look at where money starts to come into a business, it's when a customer agrees to pay for your services and they give you money in exchange for those services. 9 times out of 10, those services are not priced right. And there's a couple of reasons for that, Brad. One is it's usually a founder-led organization. So what I mean by that is, say there's an electrician out there working for somebody else. He gets the idea of, I could do this better. I could do it quicker. I could do it cheaper. This guy doesn't, whoever I'm working for, they don't get it. I'm going to go out and start my own thing. So you got to start your own thing and you say, how much money do I want to make? I want to make $100,000. Okay, so I need to do $2,000 a week, which means I probably need to charge whatever, call it $4,000 a week. And then I'm all this, $2,000 in expenses and I'm good to go. Then that person starts to grow. They usually bring on an apprentice. They bring on somebody to answer the phone. Usually it's like a neighbor or a friend of a friend or, someone's aunt who starts answering the phone. And then all of a sudden they're doing the books and then they're doing invoicing and then they're doing dispatching. And you start to build this organization with more or less, hey, we just need somebody. Can you go do it? And by the time we get to $4 to $5 million, a lot of times we still haven't dialed in our pricing. We haven't actually figured out what do we need to charge and how do we use math, basic math, to actually determine what is our actual charge for all of the services we provide. When you ask anybody, I would say 9 times out of 10, when I ask somebody, how do you charge what you charge? They'll come up with the formula. And then I say, well, why do we do it that way? And they're like, I don't know, because that's what someone else said. Where if we can use math to determine the right amount of money to come into the company for the services we are providing, then we're going to be off on a much better foot to start. Because if that's broken, everything else below is going to be broken no matter what. So what that means is we need to have our proper gross profit. And gross profit, to keep it super simple, is revenue minus cost of sales. And when it comes to cost of sales, that is cost associated with the service you are delivering. The 2 biggest ones in the trades are labor and material. So labor, as far as everyone out in the field, so your service technicians, your installers, your apprentices, everybody out in the field, and all of the material that you are selling in order to deliver the service that you're providing. So when we can include all those in cost of goods sold, we are going to then know are we actually priced right? I would say most books that I look at, they don't even have the proper amount of labor in their cost of sales. Usually there's nothing in there, and it's all in operating expenses, lumped up with the owner's payroll, office manager's payroll, dispatcher's payroll, all that. Or occasionally all the payrolls in cost of sales, including the owner's payroll, the dispatcher's payroll, the office manager, CSRs, whoever it might be. So if we can just get that right, that's usually the first problem I see with almost every client that we bring on board.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I'm not surprised by that, clumping everything together. It's easy to do. And to be honest, most people, they don't know better and it's not their fault. So what would you expect gross profit to be for a business once you get them dialed in? And what kind of discrepancies do you see with the price book? Like how far off are they? And you're like, man, your gross profit's not as good as you think. You need to do some things here.
So it really depends on your industry, your trade, and then kind of the mix of business. If you're more construction heavy, so if you're doing a lot of new construction and remodel type work, your gross profit's going to be a little bit less for a couple of reasons. One, when you go below the quote unquote line, if you're doing more construction work, you're probably spending less on marketing. You probably have less people in the office because it's a lot easier to go do a couple $1 million in construction without spending $1 in marketing because it's all relationship based. And you don't need all the people in the office like you do for a service company. And a lot of times you're doing construction work, you're just competing on price. So there is no competition on how good you are or how quick you can get it done. It's really just who can do this the cheapest for the GC that's putting out the bid. So on the construction side, I see gross profits 40 to 45%. As we lean into more of the service side of things, especially in electrical, plumbing, and HVAC, we want to get that gross profit to 60%. Now, people are on Facebook every day. People are chatting every day. And I'm not saying you got to get to 60% overnight. There's a lot of misconceptions out of there. And there's a lot of, I would say, frustrations around that when owners are like, well, I'm only at this percentage and I need to get to this percentage. Usually it's one, are you comparing apples to apples? A lot of, not every two businesses, their books are set up the same. Some people include credit card processing fees in their cost of goods sold. If you're selling financing, we definitely want to include that into cost of goods sold. So not every company is going to set up their cost of goods sold the same, but depending on the mix of your business and depending on, really the skill level needed to deliver that service. If you look at something like landscaping and you're just doing lawn care, it's really going to be hard to do a 60% gross profit in just cutting grass because the 12-year-old in the neighborhood can also cut grass. That 12-year-old in the neighborhood cannot do electrical work or plumbing work, or HVAC work. So there is a little bit of supply and demand there as well. So I would say in general, if you're at 50% gross profit baseline, you're doing better than most of the companies out there.
Okay, good to know. And then we'll take it a step further because then you get into net. And I see businesses, and we mentioned these Facebook groups and these other forums online, and people are like, yeah, I'm doing like 20% net. And that's pretty amazing if that's true. But what do you typically see like net from these businesses? And if you could even explain like what does net profit mean, that'd be helpful for some listeners as well.
Yeah. So let's start there. So what is net profit? Without getting into EBITDA or SDE, which is seller's discretionary earnings, let's just look at basic net profit. So we have revenue. Then all of a sudden we're going to minus our cost of goods sold that we just talked to, which leaves us with gross profit. So gross profit is the money we made on the direct money we made on the services that we sold. The reason we separate labor and material from everything else is, in theory, if we don't work today, there are no cost of goods sold. We're not buying material, we're not paying technicians. But everything in operating expenses, we are going to probably pay no matter what. So what are those things? I like to clump them into three categories just to keep it super simple. So we have our gross profit, and then below that, we're going to have our marketing spend. So money we're spending to get new customers, get new leads, retain customers, however we want to spend our marketing dollars. Then we have office payroll. So office payroll is going to be all the people that we need to support all the work in the field and all of our customers. And then the last thing is overhead. So when some people say overhead, they think of everything, all of the expenses involved. We like to look at overhead separate from marketing, separate from office payroll, because there are three different levers that we can pull. We can control our office payroll, we can control our marketing, and then overhead is really everything else It's going to be our rent. It's going to be our utilities. It's going to be our software expenses. It's going to be our office supplies, all of the fixed expenses that go into running the business. So we start at the top again. Revenue minus cost of goods sold equals gross profit. And then if we minus overhead, if we minus office payroll, and we minus marketing, that gives us net profit. So what is a good net profit percentage? 15 to 25% is what you're going to hear across the board. Now, where it gets a little bit sticky is it really depends on how the owner pays themselves and how involved is the owner. If the owner is operating as a full-time general manager, if someone's going to buy that business, they're either going to have to continue to pay that owner or they're going to have to replace that owner with another general manager. So we're not going to, and we can get into it later, but you hear about add backs. We're probably not going to add back that owner's salary to the bottom line because we need that person. Versus if you look at a business that is fully running without the owner, they're probably, call it 8, 10, $12 million. Owner isn't involved at all. For tax reasons, the owner still might be paying themselves something through payroll. So they're still included in office payroll. If you took that business to market, you could justify saying, hey, I pay myself $200,000 a year through salary. However, I don't run the business. I just own the business. We can add that back to profit. So that's where it gets like really, really convoluted, is how everybody is paying themselves. Because if you, just to keep it simple, if you pay yourself through a draw, you'll hear your CPA and you'll hear other people talk about owner's draw. That doesn't hit your P&L. That just hits your balance sheet because that's not an expense to run the business. That's you just taking money out of the business like it's an ATM. So we can kind of take that a bunch of different directions. But overall, if your net profit is above 15%, to be honest, regardless of what Facebook tells you and everybody else tells you, you're doing better than almost every company out there. I look at, 4 to 5 companies every week on average. Most companies are under 5% net profit. And that's just the nature of it. Regardless of what people want to tell you, most companies are not as profitable as they tell you.
Not surprised by that. And you having that visibility and being able to share that is very valuable. So let's talk about growth as well, because I know there are companies where they'll be like, yeah, we operate around 5% net because we're investing so much into growth. We just did a big rebrand. We're putting a lot of money into PPC. We're testing out Facebook ads. Let's say, and I don't know if you have this number, but let's say a company's doing 5 million and they're like, we want to grow to 6 million, 20% growth in this year. You may or may not know this, but what percentage of revenue would they need to invest in marketing to get to these targets?
Yeah. So for the first thing you said, probably the thing that drives me nuts more than anything is, well, why aren't you profitable? Oh, we're reinvesting in the business. And I just simply ask, well, tell me what you've done to reinvest in the business. And usually they don't have an answer. Because if you're a $5 million company, even if you go rebrand, maybe you spent $100,000. That's not moving the needle a ton. And you didn't spend it all at once either. You probably spent $100,000 over the course of 12 to 18 months. So that just drives me nuts because that's just an excuse how we can justify to ourselves that we're not as profitable as we need to be. Now, to answer the second part of the question, there's a lot of other factors into that. And you mentioned rebrand. So probably everybody that's listening to this podcast is familiar with KickCharge and Dan Antonelli. He puts out a lot of great statistics of the more powerful your brand is, the less you actually have to spend on marketing. So when you have a household name brand, because of the van wraps, because of the slogan, because of the yard signs, because of the mailers, all these things that people just keep seeing and hearing, you're probably going to spend less on marketing than most companies. Now, the just basic answer to the question is, I see most growing companies spend between 12 to 15% in marketing at the high end. We recommend usually between 8 to 12%. The reason we recommend that is usually most companies have a lot of other things they need to fix before they actually go scale. And then a caveat to that is most companies are not, and this probably, is one of the biggest opportunities I see for anybody listening is, are we actually leveraging all of the customers that we've actually acquired in the first place? A lot of times we go get a new customer, we serve them, and it's on to the next one. It's on to the next one. It's on to the next one. And we're forgetting about all the people we worked really hard for. So are we creating an amazing customer experience? So are we, Joey Coleman wrote a good book, How to Never Lose a Customer. John Ruhlin wrote a book, Giftology. I'm a big fan of both of those books. Couple that with a really strong brand. We can spend a lot less on marketing when we have a stronger brand. And what do I mean by that? Are we sending an email newsletter twice a month to our existing database just to remind them that we exist by just providing value? Hey, spring is coming. Now's the time to change your air filters. Or, if you're an electrician, hey, we're turning back our clocks. Don't forget to change the batteries in your smoke detector. We're providing value, but we're also reminding them that, hey, we exist. Are you sending text messages to people who haven't used you in 6 months? Are you then giving them an awesome experience so they refer you to other people? And I'm not saying like create a referral program and pay people for that and do all that stuff, but are you sending them handwritten thank you notes after the job is complete? Is your technician personally asking for a Google review? Are you sending them personalized gifts if they spend a certain dollar amount? All these things go into lower marketing, higher revenue, which just by moving those two in opposite directions increases your bottom line significantly.
Yeah. I'm so glad you talked about everything to re-engage your past customers, because I have seen data of businesses doing 25 million plus a year. And this is a company in specific. I'm not going to say who they are, but the company does 25 million a year. 60% of their business are from customers who have used them in the last 5 years. And they do a great job. Like, they send an email every 2 weeks of educational content just to stay top of mind. They send mailers on a quarterly basis to the customers. So they're doing all of this re-engagement marketing to their past customers. And I don't know how granular you guys get with calculating customer acquisition costs, but do you guys do anything to calculate LTV, so lifetime value of a customer? Because if you look at that repeat customer percentage and you can break down the average ticket, there is a formula to see, okay, what's the LTV of our customer here? Do you guys do anything like that?
Yeah, that's a good question, Brad. So where we start is all of our clients get a scoreboard. So one of our biggest goals is to simplify financials so that way any owner, no matter their background experience, they have a really good idea of where they're at financially, understand why they're there, and understand what do they need to do in order to get to where they actually want to go. So the scoreboard that we provide gives them it's one-page PDF, and it's color-coded on all the drivers that we track. If it's red, it means this is an issue and we need to fix it. If it's yellow, we're going to keep an eye on it. Green means we're doing well on it. So we're going to compare where are we at year to date to where were we at last year? Where are we forecasting to go? And then where do we actually want to be? And if those don't line up, that means we have an issue and we need to dive in. So that's where we start. So if we look at, say, our marketing spend is really high, or I'll give you a real life example. One of our clients, our office payroll was just really, really, really high. And we didn't know why. It's like, we have all these people, they're busy all day. So we dove in and they had a ridiculous amount of CSRs. And the number of CSRs they were taking a ridiculous amount of calls, but it wasn't turning into revenue. So we had to drill into why is that the case? So we're going to start tracking things once we know, like we're always going to track the big picture, then we're going to drill in. So what we realized is their call booking rate wasn't good. And then their field conversion rate wasn't good. So there was a lot of things happening, but not a lot of money going into the actual bank. And that's why our office payroll was higher than it needed to be. Now, to answer your question about customer lifetime value, that's the exact same thing. If our marketing spend is too high and they're like, man, no matter what we do, we just can never get enough customers, we're going to look at the same thing. What's our call booking rate? What's our field closing rate? What's our average ticket? And then what are we doing to re-engage those people? Because as we grow, the amount of repeat customers should go up because we're building a better and better and better database of more and more people. And our marketing should go down because all those people should be evangelists of our company as well if we're treating them right. Like you said, if we're providing them actual value, if we're reminding them that we exist, if we're putting them on a membership plan and being proactive for them, all these things. So that way when their friends and their neighbors in their neighbor Facebook group and all these things say, hey, do you guys have a good plumber? Oh yeah, use this person. Oh yeah, use this person. Now our acquisition cost is going down, which means our marketing spend is going down. And then our lifetime value of the customer is going up. And it allows us to then scale confidently and more predictable instead of relying on, I hope Google sends us customers this month if we give them this amount of money.
That's all great info. Talk a little bit about membership plans. Like, how valuable is that for a business, especially as you're going to market, you want to exit the business? Is a PE group looking to be like, hey, you don't even have a membership program built out. What are we going to do here? Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. And That's a good question. I think it really depends on what the PE group's goal is. Is this going to be a roll-up strategy where we're just going to tuck you in anyway, so we don't really care, versus this is going to be a platform company. We really, we're going to go into your market, and the first company we have to acquire has to have all this stuff. So there's a lot of moving parts in that, but in general, just from a business acquisition standpoint, even on a broader scale, is if you look at most home service, especially plumbing, electrical, HVAC, there's not a lot of recurring revenue. Recurring revenue increases the value of businesses significantly for a couple of reasons. The customers are a lot stickier, and you start every month knowing, hey, we at least have some money. And with the membership, we know we're going to go out to that home twice a year. So it does give them, an increased value.
Predictability as well.
Yeah. There's more predictability. We know the customers are sticky. We know how much revenue we're going to get, and if they're using something like Service Titan, we can go in and look at all the data as well. So I wouldn't say memberships are, the end all be all. You have to also be able to deliver on them, or it could go the other way. But if you can deliver on a membership model that your customer actually feels like they're getting value out of, it does. For another reason as well, humans in general are a big believer in how you do anything is how you do everything. And if they see a company with messy books, no membership, and they don't look at anything else, they're going to assume technicians don't know what they're doing, probably don't have a sales process. We probably got to train them, probably need to replace a lot of people, probably too many people in the office. Like, it's going to start to raise a lot more red flags, which inherently brings down the value that they're willing to pay for that business.
Yeah, I appreciate the answer. And yeah, let's talk about the landscape. I'm saying PE, and that's private equity. These private equity groups, they buy these plumbing, HVAC, electrical companies. Let's talk about that a little bit. So we were talking before, you mentioned the last 4 to 5 years, you've seen a big spike in activity. And I have as well. I mean, I've been in the home service space building software for 10 years now. And ever since COVID happened, it's just been crazy, which then that was 5 years ago. Talk a little bit about what you've seen in that time frame, and then we'll dive into like a little bit more of these PE groups.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously they realized, one, we have a lot of cash, so we need to do something with it. The amount of cash that went into the system in the last 5 years is insane. And, they're essential businesses, so they won't even be shut down by a pandemic that shut down pretty much everything else. So that's always a good thing. They're never going to be outsourced, at least for a really long time. I know you're in the AI space, Brad. AI is not going to, wire up a house anytime soon, and it's not going to fix all the houses that are already wired.
I agree with you.
So there's a lot of, kind of security and all that. Now it's a very fragmented industry. There's a lot of, there's a lot of one-man bands and mom and pops and all that. So they also see the pros and cons of that, but it's a great opportunity for, what they call a roll-up strategy. And just to simplify it for everybody out there, what that means is they're going to go buy one plumbing company, and then they're going to buy another and another and another and another, and they're going to continue to roll it up. And the advantage they have is, one, they have access to capital. So they really have an unlimited amount of money they can, get because of the platforms they've built. But usually what they're playing is they're playing the arbitrage on the multiple. So what does that mean in layman's terms? A multiple is how many times we're just going to call it net profit just to keep it super simple. If your business spits out $500,000 a year and the multiple is, call it 4, that means someone would pay $2 million for your business. They're going to take 500,000 multiplied by 4. Your business is worth $2 million. That is a very basic answer. I'm not saying that's what the multiple would be. It's not necessarily off net profit, but to keep it super simple, that's what they do. Now, as businesses get bigger, that multiple increases. So all of a sudden you're doing $20 million a year bottom line. Now you might be selling for, I don't know, call it a 20 multiple, which means you can go buy all these smaller companies at it. Say now you're a $20 million company and you're worth 20x, 20 times your bottom line. You can buy all these smaller companies, wrap them up under yours. You bought it for 4x. Now it's worth 20x. Now that is just a model, an example that I'm using. That's not true numbers. That's not exactly what it looks like, but that's what they're doing. They can overpay for things because they're fine overpaying, because once they roll it up under their platform, it's automatically worth like 5 times more than what they paid for it.
Yeah, it's that instant arbitrage that most people may not realize that, but the simple math that you're saying, 4x, and then let's say they buy it and it's worth 8x, they've already doubled their money. right when they buy you in terms of value of the company. And then obviously, these PE groups, they have buying power. We have clients who are PE groups and they have buying power. It's like, hey, we have 20 brands, and instead of paying your retail rates, can we pay this because you're going to get 20 brands right off the bat? And for us, it's like, sure, as long as you onboard all 20 within, we'll do like a timeline. But yeah, they have buying power. So some of their software costs are a lot lower as well. So not only are they getting the arbitrage on the revenue, but they have maybe cheaper software costs because they can roll up and buy in bulk. And I'm sure they have relationships with the OEMs where they're able to buy units in bulk because of that. So it's an interesting model. And I see things on the Facebook groups where people are like, oh, well, these PE groups, they're not going to deliver as good of an experience, or they're not going to do this. And it's like, these are smart people. There's reasons they have many millions of dollars, and they're spending a lot in marketing because they also have these flywheels built out where they get a net new customer and they can put them in the flywheel of sending educational content. They're sending postcards, and I'm sure they have these calculations built out where our LTV is going to be this if we can get our customers back on this frequent of a basis. And we're talking very high level, but just for the viewers, this is this is how some of the PE groups are thinking. So
it's 100% true. Where I don't want people to get discouraged is when you hear that PE is coming into your town. There's still plenty of opportunity for everybody out there.
100%. Yes.
Less and less people are going in the trades. PE groups aren't for every homeowner. Everyone operates differently too. They're not all going to be successful. You know, as time goes on, you see more and more quote unquote failing and going under, going bankrupt. That's just the nature of it. They're playing the numbers game, and they're also getting in industries they haven't been in historically. So there's a learning curve for them as well. Some of them are realizing it's harder than others. And when you talk about the buying power and all that, that's 100% what they're doing, that they have a financial advantage on. But I think what we can learn from PE for anybody listening to this is, how do they operate their business? They use numbers to make decisions. And that's exactly what we do as fractional CFOs. We take the numbers to make decisions. Now, I think where the mom and pops and the people listening to this can do better is you can have more of a human element to it. So you hear a lot of times PE is, they're all just spreadsheet driven, numbers driven. That's true and false. Just like every other business, there's plenty of mom and pops that are too numbers driven. There's mom and pops that are too, human driven, and those ones aren't going to win either. So there's room for everybody. Just like restaurants, there's room for everybody. There's room for your favorite, locally owned restaurant. And there's room for the PE owned restaurant that's, 2 doors down as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And at the end of the day, if you build a good business, it's going to be valuable. And people talk about the PE groups maybe not being as personable with customers. And in a lot of cases, yes, that may be true. So there are a lot of advantages of being like, hey, we only have 5 technicians, but we do this very well. And then, like we've talked about, there's advantages of the PE group. So I wanted to ask another question about the prep work and kind of the timeline it takes from start to finish. I know we talked, you come in week 1 and you identify all of these things that someone could improve on. What's the time frame of getting into a good, healthy spot where they're like, okay, we're confident on our finances now?
Yeah, so I think it really depends on 2 things. One is like the quality of data. So sometimes our first step of working with anybody is like, let's not necessarily change the way we're operating, but first let's make sure our data is our chart of accounts, our balance sheet, our P&L, all the things that are usually done in QuickBooks. Most people use QuickBooks Online. And so that way we have a clear picture of where are we at from a gross profit standpoint, where are we at from an office payroll standpoint, where are we, all the things that we talked about earlier. So sometimes it's a matter of that and getting it cleaned up. So then when you do go to market, they're like, oh, these people know what they're doing because their books are organized. It makes sense. They got answers for everything, all that. Now, let's assume they've done that and we still have work to do. At a minimum, you're going to need to put in, 12 months of work. That's still going to be a red flag because, most companies, anybody looking to buy a business, they're going to ask for the last 2 or 3 years of financials and tax returns. And if they see, year 3 and year 2 look terrible, and all of a sudden year 1, which would be like the previous year, looks great, they could still look to buy your business. They're going to have a lot of questions. It's probably going to bring down the value of the business a little bit versus if you have a, showing steady progress over the last 2 to 5 years of you guys are getting better every year. You're getting better every year. Profits growing, gross profits growing, and all that. So I would say to sell for what, an owner believes their business is worth based on all the blood, sweat, and tears they put in. Usually, at a minimum of 2 years. When I talk to most business brokers, people that are helping other owners sell their business, usually the conversation is around, you should have came to us a couple of years ago. So 90% of the time that, I have many friends that are business brokers, and they say, when I got into this business, I thought it was going to make everybody's day and tell them how much their business is worth. What I realize is most days I'm the bearer of bad news, disappointing another owner that your business isn't as worth as much as you think it is, even though you've put in all the hard work. So that's just the nature of it. I have an analogy that if we look at getting in a car as going to work, most business owners get in their car, drive all day, but they don't get anywhere closer to where they actually want to be. So a lot of cities have what they call a belt line. Raleigh, I live in Raleigh, they have a belt line. It's literally a circle highway that goes around the entire downtown. So you could drive on the belt line all day and not go anywhere, or just go in circles and circles, not get any closer to where you want to be. That's most business owners. Whereas what we need to do is we need to put a stake in the ground of, this is where I want to go. This is where I am. And then let's work backwards and use a GPS to figure out, how do we actually get there? And then how do we track our progress?
Makes a lot of sense. So what you're saying is people need to start today.
You need to start today, 100%.
I agree with you. I mean, just understanding the finances of your business, it's so crucial. Well, we've been talking for a little while. Let the viewers know, where can they find you? I've known Paul for a long time now. I've heard great things from shared clients of ours, and I've heard and seen a lot of people recommend Paul on these Facebook groups. But Paul, just give the viewers an idea of where they can find you or how to reach out to you.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. I appreciate the opportunity. If you guys just go to the bluecollaradvisors.com. So the bluecollaradvisors.com. If you go there, you can book a call with me. You can check out the podcast. I had Brad on as a guest previously on the podcast that I host. You can, I have a pricing calculator. You can download a pricing calculator there. It's 100% free. It's a workbook. It's got a video. It's got a PDF, all the good things to figure out exactly what you need to charge. At the end of the day, I want everybody to win. Over 50% of businesses never make it to their 5th birthday. And we need to change that. And what I see, almost everybody in the trades is really good at the trade they provide. And they're really good at, providing a good customer experience and a good customer service and all these things, but they're just missing that one piece. And I believe so many people are so close to having their business worth so much more if they just start doing a few things differently. So go to the bluecollaradvisors.com, go there, check it out, reach out to me today.
Awesome. Well, appreciate everyone watching. This is a great conversation. Stay tuned for the next episode, and we'll talk soon. Thanks.
Thanks, Brad.
Thanks for tuning in. If you'd like to connect with me personally, you can find me at chadmpeterman.com. To see what our team's up to, you can visit petermanbros.com. Don't forget to check out the YouTube channel and consider joining the CSTG arena. As always, keep growing out there.